Welcome back to Celebrity Radio. It's Alex Belfield talking to some of the country's biggest stars and some of my favourite people, and a man that I grew up listening to week in and week out for decades. Dave Lee Travis was the star of radio, who in recent years has had difficulties. We'll talk about that. But in 2018, he returns to United DJs, a brand new radio station, and I'm delighted to say he joins us on the phone exclusively now. How are you, Dave?
I am fine, thank you very much, Alex. I'm fine apart from a bad back. That's what happens when you get a bit older.
How old are you now? Because we remember you on air as this sort of incredibly strong, boisterous, uplifting DJ. You still sound young. You don't seem to have changed at all.
Only you can tell if I've changed at all. I don't feel I have. But yeah, age-wise, whoop, up there at 72.
Yeah, incredible.
And that's an interesting age to be as well, because most people at one time would have gone, what? You know, how can anybody be doing anything at that age? But it is amazing that... you have an ability within you when you love something very much and you go for it, everything else is pushed to one side. So you concentrate on your work, on what you do and how you do it. And that, has not given me time to think about age. And it really doesn't matter at all at this point.
I know
Apart from the fact that you've got less time to live than you've already had. That's the only bad bit.
I know that you've had various operations and things. How bad did it become at its worst? Was it medical? Because I know I've read there's a Dr. Sarnos book about back pain, saying that it's often related, sort of psychosomatic and all of that stuff. Did you get to the bottom of what was wrong?
Well, not quite. It is improved at this point, certainly from where it was, say, 3-4 years ago. But back pain is something, first of all, that you cannot possibly ask somebody to understand if they haven't had back pain. It's one of those things, you might as well say it's all right, it's just one of those, It's a back pain, it's nothing really bad, but it can be very debilitating. And I think over the past few years, as you know, I've been sort of generally doing stuff like my photography and what have you. Haven't been on the air, I suppose, I've gone through various bits and pieces. I've gone through a bit of, pain here and there, and then that translates to being tired because you're taking pills to try and keep the pain away, and that makes you fall asleep during the day, and it's hell. Sometimes you just want to throw all the pills away and say, right, start tomorrow with no pills, and then probably drop dead in 5 days' time.
Yeah, don't do that.
Try to avoid that.
If you could, that would be great. Let's talk about you as we sit here today. What does it feel like one day when you realised that there isn't a microphone in front of you, before we talk about anything else? That must have been heartbreaking.
Yeah, in a way, until I stopped broadcasting through something that I could not control, I sort of thought, hang on a minute, I've been broadcasting for like 50 years, solid, and suddenly I'm not doing a show anymore. And then various things set in, and, you sit back and you wonder whether, is it worthwhile, is it not worthwhile? Should you get back into it, or should you not? And you suddenly realize that there's so many people out there with major problems that you can't rest on your laurels and say, I'm in pain, I'm this, I'm that. There's so many other people out there that you would like to be able to help, or that are a lot worse off than yourself. And I know that sounds very trite to say that, Alex, and I apologize for it sounding a bit sloppy. I don't mean it to sound that way, but what I do mean is I mean it from the heart. That there are so many people out there suffering, and for me, I had a great broadcasting career, and I thought I would still have one. But now it's come to this point where I'm about to dip my toe in the water again, which will be great.
One of the things we have to talk about is 2012. After 50 years on the air, there was a knock at your door early in the morning. 4 police cars outside. Operation Yewtree came to arrest you over suspicion of historic sex offences. I've read those accusations, and I've read what was said in court, and I've also seen the verdicts, and it seems to me incredibly unfair to associate you with the likes of Stuart Hall or Savile. You certainly weren't that. The accusations were nothing like that. And lest we forget, you were found not guilty of 12 of the counts. Later in a retrial in 2014, you were found guilty of 1 count of indecent assault and given a 3-month suspended sentence. I wonder how you feel about this now. It was a travesty, it seems to me, of justice and incredibly unfair. And as we've seen in many of the cases like Sir Cliff Richard, Jimmy Tarbuck or Jim Davidson, the whole process was incredibly humiliating, incredibly costly, and in most cases initially a trial by media, and overall onerous and not fair.
You put me in a strange position there, Alex, because really deep down, I said what I had to say at the time. And I think people realized in certain areas of the trial that things had been said. This has been on my mind for 5 years.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it was something out of my control. The unfortunate thing is that nowadays somebody only has to say something, and that's enough to stop a person's career. And I look out at different things and think, oh God, you know what? As soon as anybody's name is mentioned, it's like everybody jumps on the bandwagon. And if there's something wrong that's gone on there, that's fine. That's what the courts are for. But sometimes the courts can get it wrong as well.
The tarnish that it has on your reputation and your career is so dramatic. And here we sit today with sort of a new beginning. Does it feel like a new horizon with the thought that you'll be back behind the mic in 2018? This is a huge step for you, isn't it?
I don't see it as a new horizon. I see it as a different horizon. Such a lot has happened to so many people in the last 5 years that it can never be the same again. The world can never be the same again. Look at where we're standing worldwide with America being run by, what name shall we give him? The world is going nuts. It's going nuts. And then, interestingly enough, just on a slight sideline, I read in The Week, which is a very nice little magazine that takes the choice bits out of most of the press things, that is Oprah Winfrey going to stand for president? And you think, yes, everybody loves Oprah Winfrey, but for God's sake, isn't one celebrity president showing off what he can do enough of a warning? Stay away from another one. I find that the whole world is going nuts. And from my point of view, all I want to do is enjoy myself. And, broadcasting to me has been a major part of my life. And I would have to be honest with you, Alex, and say that, I haven't sort of been saying to myself, oh my God, I must get back on air. This is terrible. I have to get back or I'll die. I haven't thought that way. I've just thought, my other love is photography. So I've been doing a lot of that. But the idea of a station where the program directors are not people who are invariably a lot younger than you are, trying to tell you what is good to be played and what isn't good to be played, when effectively there are a few of us that have been round the block a few times now, like Mike Reed and the rest of the people, Tony Prince, who's involved in this as well. They know the music. We know what works and what doesn't with an audience. We don't have to have somebody who is being paid to do a job that really isn't necessary. You have to have a love.
Yeah.
You have to have a love for your music. That's it, bottom line.
You were a very, very bad influence on me growing up, because I remember listening in the car to that resignation thing you did, which was the most glorious bit of radio I've ever heard to this day. It was pure theatre as far as I'm concerned, but it gave me a spirit where I thought, you've got to have personality. And it turns out if you have personality, you normally get fired, which would probably sum up my career. But the truth is, you always had a fight in you, didn't you? You on air always cared and were passionate. You would live and die by your passion of the show. And I suppose that's what this radio station is about, bringing people back together who have been through ups and downs, through highs and lows in their career, but been at the top of their game. I mean, the days back at Radio 1 in Luxembourg, you were megastars, weren't you? All of you, collectively.
I guess we were, and there's a lot to be said for the fact that, when Radio 1 started, they didn't have any competition as such. So it was bound to be well accepted, at least at the beginning, being built upon. But then as other stations came about, the pirates had already been there, it just developed into something where we all found our own way, with help from different people. I mean, my time at the BBC was great. I loved it at Radio 1. And then, essentially I came away from Radio 1 based on the thing that you said about my resignation. And again, that was only that at the time, and I can afford to sort of repeat this, that the reason for my going then was simply because the staff who made up the family of Radio 1, which was mainly the secretaries, the girls, the producers, those people were the ones who worked their asses off to make sure that things were right. We were at the top end taking all the glory or whatever. And I found that they were being underfunded, shall we say, and taken advantage of, because once, the people would do a good job, they'd have another job foisted upon them without too much remuneration. And I'm sure that is now gone. Those days are all gone. But at the time, I felt strongly about it. And, it wasn't something that anybody knew about. So I said it. I couldn't help it.
It was a beautiful bit of radio. And do you have any regrets about doing it? Because it's gone down in infamy, and it's always played on those classic shows, isn't it, of best radio moments, or I suppose worst radio moments in terms of your career at that radio station.
I don't consider it a best or a worst moment. I consider it just part of me.
Right.
I said it. I mean, I remember getting a serious talking to from my boss when one morning on the breakfast show, I happened to notice for the first time that one particular subject was covered in every paper. So it wasn't a case of sending somebody to a particular newspaper. There was a one-page advert about seal culling, one of those horrendous things that happens out there with animals and what have you. And I felt very strongly about it, watching these guys beating the brains out of baby seals and things like that. It just offends me so much. And probably, to be realistic, if I'd been standing on that ice and somebody handed me a gun, I'd probably have shot the guy who was doing it. So there's an example of how strongly I felt about it. Yeah. And I just said, look, if you're having your breakfast at the moment, I even apologized for mentioning it during breakfast time. I said, there's now no excuse for you not to follow through on this, because whatever newspaper you've got in front of you right now has got this page in it. So for God's sake, just do something. If it's just to write in and say, I hate this thing, whatever, just do what you can. Oh my God, you just thought I'd started World War III. What the hell can you do? You feel strongly about something, you mention it.
But again, that power and influence, I'm not sure there are many radio shows left where you could have that conversation with your audience, that listener, and have that amount of impact. I mean, the radio might be on today, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're paying attention.
That's very true. I've in the past said that I look upon the radio industry, and indeed not just radio, but so-called celebrity, as a very large room where there is so much rubbish going on in the middle of this room, and up on the edge there's a shelf that goes all the way around the room, and on there is sat the people who were there for a long time, who are looking down going, what is this? And that includes audiences as well as artists. I am not a celebrity. I am a broadcaster. That's what I do. I don't want to be, out there, being shown, or at my height of being shown out on the night doing something with, going out to a party or whatever. I like what I do, which is broadcasting. But as I say, this room is spinning round with all these idiots in the middle of it, and you think, when's common sense coming back?
Were you always like that? Did you ever get carried away, especially at Radio 1, with the hedonism? I look at those road shows. I went to one in Skegness in about 1990, and I couldn't believe my eyes. There were 50,000 people on a beach, all there in the palm of your hands. It's extraordinary, the power you guys had.
Yeah, I mean, each for his own time. It is so hard to look back now, as you say. You go down to a beach somewhere in Cornwall, and there's thousands of people standing around this little roadshow unit, which is playing music, with a DJ on it. And then we branched out and maybe found somebody locally who was a local hero or a big name who would come along and say hi on stage, play a few silly games with Smiley Miley, and do all that stuff. And it was a joy on the faces of these people, but that can't happen anymore. It's you can do shows with people, but the kids, no. There's no way you could do it with the kids. I mean, you have to have a major Hyde Park concert with fireworks and TV crews, and this and that and the other. At the end of the day, it is whatever affects you musically is what you should latch on to. And to me, the purest form of music is that which comes from the radio. When there are no pictures supplied, there's nobody telling you how you should be doing this or why. You're just listening to it because somebody who presumably knows what he's talking about is saying, now, this might have escaped your attention. You may not have heard this for 30 years. Doesn't matter. If it's good, it's good. End of story.
And I guess that's what United DJs will be.
They are doing, and that I find extremely interesting, and that's why I've agreed to go on there and do a show with them.
I guess I'm going to ask you the next question, which is like asking a comedian for the punchline, but have you thought about your first record and what your opening line will be on that first program?
Do you know what, Alex? I can see that you're a seasoned talker, the way you placed that into my brain, because a while back I did have a first record that I was going to play, and that was well before I even thought of it. This is like 2-3 years ago. I suddenly thought, if I go back on radio, what will I play first? And what will I say? And I'm not going to tell you. I'm just not going to tell you. Yeah, because there were so many fun things I thought of that I could do. But no, no.
Don't spoil it. It's fine. We can wait.
I'm not going to spoil it. It's gone. It'll be there.
And then the reaction you've had over the last few years from friends, family and fans, I'm sure at your lowest moments this has been the thing that has kept you going, because I know there have been many people out there that have had your back and been so supportive. It's times like this when you realise who your friends and family truly are.
There's no question about that. We moved from where I was before mainly because we had to. The vast costs of the trial were such that the only way I could raise the money to pay for it was to sell the house. And so we sold the house, and we bought a little place in another village, which was great. And during that time, it's all very well your friends in the business who contact you, which is fabulous. You're right. It's so supportive to have people, calling you and offering their services, as it were, if there's anything they could do, that sort of thing. But even more important is the people who are not in the business. First of all, the people in our village were so nice. They came round to the house. Some of them brought a bottle of wine or something and said, "Welcome to the village," and all this, and they understood what I'd been through. And Marianne and I were thrilled. We thought it was great. And in the street, I'm amazed. Even now, after 5 years, there's still people walk up to me in the street and say, "Oh my God, are you well, mate? I'm so sorry about all this, blah blah blah." And it's good to have the support of people, especially people you don't even know. Oh, bless them.
And the best thing about being you, and the worst thing, is that you look like you. I mean, there's no way you can go anywhere and not be recognised.
I probably thought of having a Kojak at one point and painting my face green, but I thought, I've had this hair for a long time. I'm going to keep it. No. I think generally, there are things deep down inside me that will probably stay there forever regarding, the last 5 years. But I'm pleased now that I'm going forward and to do a show. It'll be interesting to see if I'm going to be any good.
Yeah, I wonder whether you remember how to do it. Can you forget? Is it like a bike? Yeah. I wonder.
No, I may sort of ask people. There's this fader thing here. What does that do? How far should I push that? Do you think? No, it is like riding a bike, and I know that just recently I've sort of tried it. I've been in the studio and just played some music and felt the music again. It was really great. That's what I love.
And we should pay tribute as well to Marianne, who I know has been literally your backbone while your backbone's not been feeling so well over the last few years. I mean, she's just been your rock, hasn't she?
A tribute to Marianne would be very trite. It's a lot more than that. I owe a lot to her. In fact, I could go as far as to say I very much probably owe my life to her. And she's been fantastic. So I couldn't have had any more support than I did from her. It's just brilliant. It really, really is. And only when you've been married for that long, we got married in 1971, for God's sake. It's something that just grows. It's there, and it's fabulous. And I just feel sorry for people who are not in that situation where they're married or with a partner they've been with for a long time. But yeah, the strength of her is 20 times more than the strength that I've had.
And one thing that amazes me about you, and I felt this with Cliff, and I said the same to him last Christmas, you don't seem to have any bitterness at this point. To be able to have this conversation without incredible anger is incredible. That must have taken a lot of time and a lot of thought, because when we're accused of things that we haven't done, there's no worse feeling in the world. You seem to be in a good place. Is that right?
Yes, to a degree. I am in a good place, but don't get me wrong. I do have, pretty negative feelings occasionally and strong feelings about, the things that people have done that have been totally wrong. I don't forgive people for that sort of thing, but, you move along. It's been interesting the way talking to friends and what have you, they say, just put it all behind you. I think most people would put it behind them, but I just keep a little elastic band attached to all that stuff.
And very finally, we're going to get you back on the air next month. They're going to make a big announcement. You can find United DJs on Twitter and on Facebook. They'll be doing that announcement. Can we say when you're going to be on? I know you won't tell me what you're going to say first or what you're going to play first.
Well, I'll be doing a 2-hour show, and it will be at the weekend. That's all I can tell you at this point in time, because there's various discussions going on as we speak as to what day. I'm leaning towards Sunday because that's my favourite day to broadcast. As a broadcaster,
I think you're untouchable. You're one of the greats, one of the best, and to have you back on the air at United DJs, I think will be tremendous, and we thank Mike Reed and the team. And of course, it came about, you sort of all met up at that Radio 1 birthday party, didn't you? And that sort of got all this started.
Yeah, the germ of this thing was there in the background for a while, and it was Tony Prince that approached me and mentioned this. And I just thought, wow, that's a good idea, but it takes a lot of refining to make that idea work, and I think now it's gelling. It's coming close. It's going to be starting on the beginning of March, and hopefully it's going to be interesting. It'll certainly be interesting for real music lovers.
Well, and what's also interesting is since you left radio, I left in 2011 and gave up on it and then went online. Now is a perfect time because with the iPhone, it's a level playing field. Whether you're on Radio 1 or whether you're on United DJs or Celebrity Radio, you're just a click away and people can listen. It's an amazing time because of the iPhone and technology to be doing an online station.
That is true. It's I think when you look at the amount of stations that you could tune into right now on your phone, it's mind-boggling. So you have to ask yourself the question: what is it I want? I want to listen to a radio station now, but do I want to listen to a radio station or not? Do I just want to hear some good music? Now there's two attacks there. One is, if you want to listen to the music, then sit down for an hour one night and compile your all-time favorite list and play that whenever you want. However, if you want a radio station, you've got to have something which is not going to insult your intelligence. It is not going to necessarily play 3 or 4 records in a row and not back announce any of them, just in case one of them has been caught by a listener who said, well, what was it then? I loved it. You've got to work with the audience. You've got to give them a reason to want to stay with you. And I think that is the secret of good radio. I want people to stay with the show and with the station because, in fact, I can put it into a nice package for you, because once the best comment I had, and this is a good few years ago, when I was doing stuff on Magic, somebody stopped me in the street, a man, and said, "Dave, great to meet you, blah, blah, blah." And he said, "Do you know what? I don't like every single piece of music that you play." He said, "But I will not switch you off because I don't know what you're going to do next." And invariably, it's good. So that says it all for me.
Really good to talk to you. Dave Lee Travis, one of the biggest stars of radio, is back at United DJs. Keep posted at United DJs, which is on Twitter and Facebook. And again, thank you for your time. We wish you all the best and welcome back. Thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Alex. Enjoyable. Very enjoyable.